I thought the souvenir shop trip with my son's new bride would be a chance to bond. She'd only been married to my boy for 3 weeks, and I wanted us to be close. But when that young cashier with the worried eyes pulled me aside near the porcelain figurines and whispered those chilling words, "Be careful with your daughter-in-law. She's not who she seems," my stomach dropped. I laughed it off nervously, paid for our items, and headed to the parking lot. Then, 5 minutes later, sitting in my car, I saw something that made my blood run cold. I sat behind the wheel of my sedan, keys in my lap, waiting for Courtney to finish up inside the shop. She'd said she wanted to browse the jewelry displays one more time. My hands were still trembling from what that cashier had whispered to me. The girl couldn't have been more than 23 or 24, with earnest brown eyes that seemed to carry genuine concern. I'd brushed it off as mistaken identity or perhaps some silly misunderstanding, but something about her tone had unsettled me deeply. Through the large glass storefront, I had a clear view of the counter area. I watched as Courtney, my daughter-in-law of barely 3 weeks, approached that same cashier. My breath caught in my throat. The two of them began talking, and even from this distance, I could see the conversation was intense. The cashier was shaking her head, her body language defensive. She looked frightened. Then I saw something that changed everything. Courtney leaned in close to the young woman, and her entire demeanor transformed. The sweet, gentle expression she always wore around our family vanished, replaced by something cold and menacing. Her face hardened into a mask of pure malice. I watched in disbelief as Courtney grabbed the cashier's wrist forcefully, her fingers digging in. The girl tried to pull away, her face contorted in pain or fear or both. The cashier finally wrenched herself free and practically ran toward the back room of the shop. Courtney stood there for a moment, staring after her with that terrible expression still on her face. Then, as if someone had flipped a switch, she smoothed her blonde hair, arranged her features back into that pleasant smile, and walked calmly toward the exit. My heart hammered against my ribs. I quickly looked down, pretending to search for something in my purse so she wouldn't know I'd been watching. The passenger door opened and Courtney slid in, bringing with her a wave of her expensive perfume. "Sorry that took so long, Mother Priscilla," she said in her usual cheerful voice. "I just wanted to make sure I got the perfect seashell necklace for my sister's birthday. Aren't these shops adorable? I'm so glad you suggested we come here." I forced my voice to sound normal. "No problem at all, dear. I'm just happy we could spend the day together." As I pulled out of the parking space, I stole a glance at her. She was looking out the window with that serene smile, humming softly to herself. But I noticed her hands. They were gripping her designer purse so tightly that her knuckles had gone completely white. The contrast between her relaxed expression and the tension in her hands sent a chill down my spine. During the 40-minute drive back to my son's house, Courtney talked nonstop about how much she loved being part of our family. She gushed about Derek, my 32-year-old son, and how he was the most wonderful husband any woman could ask for. She praised the house they'd just bought together, talked about her plans to redecorate, and mentioned how grateful she was that I was staying with them for the week to help them settle in. Everything she said should have warmed my heart. My son had been so lonely after his father, my beloved husband Thomas, passed away 2 years ago. When Derek met Courtney 6 months back at a charity fundraiser, he'd fallen hard and fast. Within 2 months, they were engaged. Within 4, they were married. It had all happened so quickly, but Derek seemed genuinely happy for the first time since losing his father. I'd wanted to be happy for him too. I'd wanted to love Courtney as my own daughter. But now, after what I'd witnessed, doubt gnawed at me like a hungry animal. "Are you feeling all right, Mother Priscilla?" Courtney asked suddenly. "You seem quiet." "Just a bit tired, sweetheart," I lied. "It's been a lovely day, but these old bones aren't what they used to be." She reached over and patted my hand with what seemed like genuine affection. "You're not old at all. You're only 67, and you look wonderful. Derek is so lucky to have such a vibrant, caring mother." Her words sounded sincere. Her smile looked warm, but I couldn't shake the image of her transformed face in that shop. The way she'd grabbed that poor girl's wrist, the flash of something dark and dangerous in her eyes. That night, I lay awake in the guest bedroom of Derek and Courtney's spacious colonial-style home. Sleep eluded me completely. My mind kept replaying the scene over and over. The cashier's warning, Courtney's threatening behavior, the white knuckles on the drive home. What did it all mean? At 2 a.m, I heard voices drifting up from downstairs. At first, I thought perhaps Derek had come home late from his architecture firm and was talking to Courtney, but then I realized it was only one voice. Courtney's voice. She was on the phone with someone. My curiosity overcame my better judgment. I slipped out of bed, my joints protesting quietly, and crept to the top of the stairs. The house was dark except for a light coming from the kitchen. I moved down 3 steps, just enough to hear more clearly. My heart pounding so loudly I was afraid it would give me away. "The old woman saw something today," Courtney was saying, her voice low and sharp, completely different from her usual sweet tone. "That stupid cashier tried to warn her. I took care of the cashier, don't worry. She won't be talking to anyone else. But Priscilla, she's more observant than I expected." There was a pause as the person on the other end spoke. "No, I don't think she'll be a problem," Courtney continued. "I can handle her. She's already hesitant to cause trouble in her precious son's marriage. Besides, the will is almost changed. I just need 2 more weeks. 2 weeks, and then we can move forward with the rest of the plan." My hand flew to my mouth to stifle a gasp. "The will? What will? Derek's will?" "Yes, the life insurance too," Courtney said. "It's substantial. 1.2 million. Plus his investment accounts, the inheritance from his father, and there's also the mother's trust fund. Derek manages it for her, 800,000. Once we have everything in place." I didn't hear the rest. My legs felt weak, and I had to grip the banister to keep from falling. I slowly, carefully retreated back up the stairs, my mind reeling. Courtney was after Derek's money. She was scheming something terrible. And somehow, I was part of her plan too. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed, trembling. My late husband Thomas had left Derek a substantial inheritance that Derek had invested wisely over the years. He'd built a successful architecture practice and lived comfortably. The life insurance policy had been my idea after Thomas died, to make sure Derek would be protected. And yes, I had a trust fund that Derek managed for me, money that would eventually go to him. But what did Courtney mean by the rest of the plan? And what had she done to that poor cashier? I realized with growing horror that I'd stumbled into something far more dangerous than I'd imagined. This wasn't just a difficult daughter-in-law or a personality clash. This was something calculated, something sinister. And I had no idea how deep it went or what Courtney was truly capable of. The next morning, I came downstairs to find Courtney in the kitchen, making coffee and humming cheerfully. She wore a pale yellow sundress and had her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She looked like the picture of domestic bliss. "Good morning, Mother Priscilla," she sang out. "I made your favorite cinnamon coffee. Derek just left for the office. Big presentation today with a new client. He'll be gone until late this evening." "That's nice, dear," I managed, accepting the coffee cup she handed me. My hands were steadier than I expected, considering I'd barely slept. "I have to head to work myself in about 20 minutes, Courtney continued. "We're organizing a fundraiser for underprivileged children at the nonprofit. Will you be all right here by yourself?" "Of course," I said. "I'll probably just read and rest." She kissed my cheek before leaving, her perfume lingering in the air long after the front door closed. I waited a full 10 minutes, making sure she was really gone, before I moved into action. Derek's home office was on the first floor, a room with large windows overlooking the backyard. I felt guilty invading his privacy, but I had to know what Courtney was planning. The office was neat and organized, typical of my methodical son. His desk held a computer, a few framed photos, and several stacks of papers. I started going through the documents, my heart sinking with each discovery. There were bank statements showing that Courtney had been added to all of Derek's accounts just 2 weeks after their wedding. I found a draft of a new will, dated from last week, that named Courtney as the primary beneficiary of everything. The life insurance policy paperwork confirmed what I'd heard last night: $1.2 million, with the amount recently increased from $500,000. Derek had made Courtney the sole beneficiary. In a folder labeled with my name, I found documents related to my trust fund. $800,000, accumulated over decades of careful saving and investing by Thomas and me. Derek had always managed it responsibly, but now I saw papers indicating that Derek was considering giving Courtney power of attorney over my affairs. The document wasn't signed yet, but it was dated for next week. My blood ran cold. If Courtney got control of my trust fund, if Derek had signed over everything to her, if something happened to Derek, I pulled out my phone and photographed every document I could find. My hands shook as I took picture after picture. When I was done, I carefully put everything back exactly as I'd found it. Then I sat in Derek's desk chair, trying to think clearly. I needed help, but who would believe me? My lawyer, Harold Patterson, had been a friend of Thomas's for 30 years. He'd helped us set up the trust fund and had always given us sound advice. But when I tried to call his office, his secretary informed me he was on vacation in Scotland for another week. That's when I made my decision. I had to go back to that souvenir shop and talk to the cashier. She'd tried to warn me. She knew something about Courtney. Maybe together we could figure out what to do. I grabbed my purse and car keys and drove the 40 minutes back to the shore town where the shop was located. The late September day was beautiful, with bright sunshine and a cool breeze coming off the ocean, but I barely noticed. My mind was racing with fear and plans and desperate hopes. The shop was moderately busy when I arrived. I spotted the cashier immediately. She was helping a customer, but when she saw me, her face went pale. I browsed the aisles, waiting for her to be free, my heart pounding. Finally, she approached me, glancing around nervously. "Please," I said quietly. "I need to talk to you. Can you take a break?" She hesitated, biting her lip. She was younger than I'd thought initially, probably just 21 or 22. Her name tag read Emily. "There's a coffee shop next door," she whispered. "Give me 5 minutes." I waited outside, pacing back and forth on the sidewalk. True to her word, Emily emerged a few minutes later. We walked together to the small coffee shop, found a corner table away from other customers, and ordered drinks neither of us touched. "I'm sorry I approached you yesterday," Emily began, her voice trembling. "I probably shouldn't have said anything, but I couldn't just stay quiet." "Please tell me everything you know," I said. "My son married that woman 3 weeks ago, and I think he's in danger." Emily took a deep breath. "Okay. 3 years ago, my older sister, Amanda, was dating this guy named Richard. He was really wealthy, owned a tech company in Philadelphia. Everything was going great for them. They'd been together for about 8 months, and Amanda thought he might propose soon. Then he met someone new at a business conference. A woman. Beautiful, charming, seemed perfect for him. My stomach tightened. Let me guess. She looked like Courtney. She looked exactly like Courtney, Emily confirmed. Same blonde hair, same face, same smile. She went by the name Caroline Beck back then. Richard broke up with Amanda and started dating Caroline. 2 months later, they were engaged. 1 month after that, Richard died in a car accident. His brakes failed on the highway. I felt the blood drain from my face. Caroline inherited everything, Emily continued. Richard had just updated his will and his life insurance. She collected over $2 million, and then just disappeared. Amanda was devastated. Not just about losing Richard, but because she was convinced something wasn't right about the accident. She tried to investigate, tried to talk to the police, but they ruled it accidental. Then Amanda started getting threatening phone calls. Someone told her to stop asking questions or she'd regret it. It scared her so badly that she moved to California. Did she report the threats? She tried, but she had no proof. No recordings. The calls came from burner phones. Eventually, she just gave up and tried to move on. Emily's eyes filled with tears. but it destroyed her. She's never been the same. And when your daughter-in-law walked into our shop yesterday, I recognized her immediately. It was like seeing a ghost. I knew I had to warn you. Have you told anyone else? I tried calling Amanda last night after I got home. She freaked out. She begged me not to get involved, said it was too dangerous. But I can't just do nothing. If that woman is doing this again. I reached across the table and squeezed Emily's hand. Thank you for your courage. Do you have any proof? Any photos of Caroline or Richard? Amanda might. I can ask her. We exchanged phone numbers, and I was just about to suggest we go to the police when Emily suddenly went pale. She was staring past me toward the coffee shop window. I turned around, and my heart nearly stopped. Courtney was standing on the sidewalk outside, staring directly at us through the glass. She wasn't smiling now. Her face was cold, calculating. As we watched, she slowly pulled out her phone and took a photo of Emily and me sitting together at the table. Then she turned and walked away, her heels clicking on the pavement. Oh God, Emily whispered. She knows I talked to you. Has she ever seen you before? Besides yesterday in the shop? I don't think so. Amanda never introduced me to Richard or his friends. But if she's been watching, if she followed you here. Emily's voice was panicked now. My sister got death threats, Mrs. Priscilla. What if she comes after me? I won't let that happen, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. We'll go to the police together. And tell them what? That I think the woman in a photo from 3 years ago might be your daughter-in-law? That my sister's ex-boyfriend died in what was ruled an accidental crash? They'll think we're crazy. She was right, and we both knew it. We needed more evidence, more proof. But time was running out, and now Courtney knew that Emily and I had connected. I left the coffee shop with Emily's number programmed into my phone and a promise that we'd stay in touch. The drive home felt longer than usual, my mind racing with fear and plans. I kept checking my rearview mirror, half expecting to see Courtney following me. When I pulled into Derek's driveway, my heart sank. Courtney's car was already there, parked in her usual spot. She shouldn't have been home for hours. I sat in my car for a moment, gathering my courage, before walking to the front door. I found Courtney in the living room, sitting calmly on the sofa with her legs crossed. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows, making her blonde hair glow like a halo. She looked like an angel, but her eyes were anything but angelic. "Where were you today, Mother Priscilla?" she asked, her voice pleasant but with an edge I'd never heard before. "I went shopping in town," I lied, setting my purse down. "Just browsing through some stores." "That's strange." Courtney stood up slowly, smoothing her skirt. "I could have sworn I saw you at the shore this morning. At that same souvenir shop we visited yesterday. Talking to someone. That same cashier, in fact." My heart hammered, but I kept my face neutral. "I don't know what you mean, dear. I went to the stores here in town." Courtney walked toward me, her heels silent on the plush carpet. She stopped just inches away, so close I could smell her perfume mixed with something sharper, like cold metal. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I hope you're not believing silly rumors about me, Mother Priscilla. Derek and I are so happy together, so very, very happy. It would be terrible if someone tried to ruin that. Terrible for everyone involved." The threat in her voice was unmistakable. We stood there, locked in a silent battle of wills, until I finally stepped back. "I would never want to ruin Derek's happiness," I said carefully. "He's my only child. His well-being is everything to me." "I'm so glad to hear that." Courtney's smile returned, bright and cold. "Because I'd hate for anything to damage our family relationship. We're family now, after all. And family should always protect each other, don't you think?" She walked past me toward the kitchen, calling over her shoulder, "I'm making lasagna for dinner. Derek's favorite. He should be home by 7. I stood alone in the living room, my legs shaking. The message had been clear. Courtney knew I suspected something. She knew I'd talked to Emily. And she was warning me to stay quiet. But I couldn't stay quiet. Not when my son's life might be in danger. I just had to figure out my next move carefully, because now I knew for certain that I was dealing with someone truly dangerous. Derek arrived home at 7:15, his tie loosened and his jacket slung over his arm. He kissed Courtney, complimented the smell of dinner, and asked about both of our days. I watched them interact over the lasagna, watched how Courtney touched his hand, laughed at his stories, played the role of loving wife with perfect precision. "Your mother seems stressed lately," Courtney said suddenly, setting down her fork. "I'm a bit worried about her." Derek looked at me with concern. "Mom, are you feeling okay?" "I'm fine, sweetheart," I said, just adjusting to all the changes. New house, new family dynamics. It's all good changes, just takes time. "She seemed confused today about where she was going," Courtney continued, her voice dripping with false concern. "She got a bit lost coming home from her shopping trip. Couldn't quite remember which turns to take." "That's not true," I protested. "I knew exactly where I was going." Derek's brow furrowed. "Mom, maybe you should see a doctor, just to be safe. You've been through so much stress since Dad died." "Derek, I don't need a doctor. I'm perfectly fine." "Stress can affect people in different ways," Courtney said gently, reaching over to pat my hand. "Especially grief. It's been 2 years, but that kind of loss stays with you. My own mother struggled with memory issues after my father passed. It's nothing to be ashamed of." I stared at her, realizing what she was doing. She was planting seeds of doubt about my mental state, making Derek question my competence, my memory, my reliability. If I tried to tell him the truth about her, he'd think I was confused or paranoid or worse. "I really think you should get checked out, Mom," Derek said. "Just routine blood work, maybe talk to someone about the grief. It can't hurt, right?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab my son and shake him and make him see what was happening. But Courtney was watching me with those cold eyes, a slight smile playing at her lips, and I knew that any protest would only make things worse. "Fine," I said quietly. "I'll make an appointment." "I can help you with that," Courtney offered. "I know a wonderful doctor. Very understanding, great with older patients." Older patients. As if I were some senile grandmother instead of a 67-year-old woman with all her faculties intact. After dinner, I tried to talk to Derek privately. I found him in his office, reviewing blueprints for a project. "Derek, honey, can we talk? Just the two of us?" "Sure, Mom. What's up?" I closed the door and sat down. "I need to tell you something about Courtney, something important." His expression immediately became guarded. "What about her?" "I'm concerned about some things I've noticed. Some behaviors that seem off. I think there might be things about her past that you don't know." Derek set down his pencil, and I could see frustration building in his face. "Mom, I know you're lonely since Dad died, and I know it's been hard seeing me with someone new, but you can't try to control my life. That's not what this is about." "Isn't it? Because Courtney warned me this might happen. She said that sometimes older women get jealous when their sons remarry, that they feel replaced or left behind. She said you might try to come between us." I felt as if he'd slapped me. "She said that? When?" "A few days ago. She was worried about it, actually. She loves you, Mom, and she wants to have a good relationship with you. But she's noticed that you seem resistant to accepting her into the family." "Derek, that's not true. I want you to be happy. But I think Courtney might be hiding something from you. Something serious." "Like what?" I hesitated. If I told him about the overheard phone call, he'd want to know why I was eavesdropping. If I mentioned the scene in the shop, Courtney would deny it. If I talked about Emily and the story about Richard, it would sound like paranoid conspiracy theories. "I just think you should be careful," I said finally. "Maybe look into her background more carefully. Talk to her friends from before you met. See if there's anything you don't know." Derek stood up, anger flashing in his eyes. "I can't believe this. I finally find someone who makes me happy. Someone who helps fill the hole Dad left, and you're trying to sabotage it. Courtney was right about you. Please, Derek, just listen." "No, you listen. I love Courtney. We're married. She's my wife and your daughter-in-law. and you need to accept that. Whatever problems you're having with aging or grief or loneliness, you need to work them out. But I won't let you destroy my marriage." He walked out of the office, leaving me sitting there with tears streaming down my face. I'd lost him. Courtney had already turned him against me so thoroughly that he wouldn't even consider the possibility that I might be telling the truth. That night, I lay awake again, staring at the ceiling. Around 2 in the morning, I heard my bedroom door creak open. I froze, my heart racing. Through my half-closed eyes, I saw a figure in the doorway, silhouetted by the hallway nightlight. Courtney. She walked into my room slowly, silently, and closed the door behind her. I kept my eyes mostly shut, watching her through my lashes, every muscle in my body tense. She crossed to my bed and sat down on the edge of the mattress. I felt the bed dip under her weight. "I know you're awake, Priscilla," she whispered. I didn't respond, didn't move. "Let me make this very simple." Her voice was barely audible, but carried a weight of absolute menace. "You saw nothing yesterday. You heard nothing last night. Emily will not be a problem much longer. I've already made some calls, and she's been sufficiently frightened. If you try to interfere with my plans, if you try to turn Derek against me, I will have you declared mentally incompetent. I've already started laying the groundwork, as you've noticed. Derek will believe me, not you. He already does believe me." She paused, and I felt her hand brush against my arm. Her touch was cold, and you should know that accidents happen to elderly women all the time. Falls downstairs, wrong medications. Carbon monoxide leaks. So many tragic possibilities. Derek would be devastated, of course, but I'd comfort him, help him through his grief. Again, the emphasis on that last word sent ice through my veins. Again. How many times had she done this before? "Sleep well, Mother Priscilla," she whispered, standing up. "And remember what I said. I'm watching you, always watching." She glided out of the room as silently as she'd entered, closing the door with barely a sound. I lay there, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst, tears streaming down my face, and realized I was trapped. Trapped in this house with a woman who was clearly a sociopath, maybe even a murderer, a woman who had systematically isolated me from my only child, a woman who was planning something terrible, and there was no one I could turn to, no one who would believe me. Harold was still overseas. Emily was frightened into silence. Derek thought I was having mental problems. I was completely, utterly alone. The next morning, I discovered my phone was missing. I searched everywhere in my room, growing more frantic by the minute. I'd had it on my nightstand when I went to sleep. All those photos I'd taken of Derek's documents were on that phone. Courtney must have taken it during her nighttime visit. Of course she had. I found Derek and Courtney having breakfast together in the sunny kitchen. They looked up when I entered, both smiling. "Good morning, Mom," Derek said cheerfully. "Want some pancakes?" "I can't find my phone," I said, trying to keep the accusation out of my voice. "Have either of you seen it?" "Oh no," Courtney said with perfect concern. "That's terrible. When did you last have it?" "Last night. On my nightstand." "Well, maybe you moved it somewhere and forgot. Why don't you use Derek's phone to call it?" "We tried that, but my phone didn't ring. Either it was turned off or dead, or Courtney had destroyed it." After Derek left for work, I went straight to his computer in the office, determined to at least email Harold. Even though he was on vacation, maybe he'd check his messages. But when I opened Derek's email account, my blood ran cold. There were messages in his sent folder that I knew Derek hadn't written. Messages from his account to himself, supposedly from me, saying confused, rambling things. One talked about seeing people who weren't there. Another mentioned believing that someone was trying to hurt Derek. A third complained about Courtney in language that sounded paranoid and delusional. Courtney had hacked Derek's email and was sending fake messages to make me look mentally unstable. I tried to compose an email to Harold, explaining everything, but my hands were shaking so badly I could barely type. I managed to send a brief message begging him to call me as soon as possible, saying it was an emergency. Then I cleared the browser history and closed everything. I had to get out of this house. I grabbed my purse and headed for the garage, only to find all 4 tires on my car completely flat. Not just low on air, flat. Cut, probably, though it looked like they'd simply lost pressure. Panic clawed at my chest. I was being systematically trapped. I walked to the neighbor's house 2 doors down, a woman named Helen who Derek had introduced me to when I first arrived. She was around my age, friendly, with a small dog that yapped constantly. I knocked on her door, out of breath and frightened. "Priscilla," Helen said warmly when she answered. "What a nice surprise. Is everything all right? You look upset." "Helen, I need to use your phone," I said. "It's important. I need to call someone." "Of course, dear. Come in." She led me to her kitchen, where a cordless phone sat on the counter. "Is your phone not working?" "I can't find it, and I need to make a call. May I have some privacy?" "Oh, well, sure." Helen looked a bit taken aback but stepped into the living room. I started to dial Harold's office, but then I realized I didn't actually have the number memorized. It was programmed into my missing phone. I stood there, my mind blank with fear and frustration, trying desperately to think of anyone else I could call. "Helen," I called out, abandoning the phone. "I need to tell you something about my daughter-in-law, Courtney." Helen came back into the kitchen, her pleasant expression turning to concern. "I think she's dangerous," I said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I think she's trying to hurt Derek. She's been threatening me, and she took my phone, and I saw her grab a cashier at a store, and there was this girl named Emily whose sister's boyfriend died after he started dating someone who looked just like Courtney. And, oh dear," Helen interrupted gently, her face filling with pity. "Oh, Priscilla, honey, that pitying tone stopped me cold. Courtney came by yesterday afternoon," Helen continued. "She was worried about you. She said you've been having delusions since your husband died. She said you might have an episode and might come here saying strange things. She asked me to call her or Derek if you showed up." The world seemed to tilt. "She did what?" "She's concerned about you, dear. She said you've been very stressed and might need professional help." "Is that what this is about? Are you feeling confused?" "No, I'm not confused." "She's lying to you, Helen. She's dangerous. Please, you have to believe me." But Helen was already reaching for her phone. "I think I should call Derek." "Don't," I begged. "Please don't. Just forget I said anything." But it was too late. Helen dialed, and within 20 minutes, Derek's car pulled into Helen's driveway. He came to the door looking worried and frustrated, with Courtney right behind him, the picture of loving concern. "Mom, what's going on?" Derek asked. "I just needed to make a phone call," I said weakly. "She was saying some very troubling things," Helen said quietly to Derek and Courtney. "About Courtney being dangerous. About people dying." She seemed quite agitated and confused. Derek's face fell. Courtney put her hand on his arm, a gesture of support. "I think it's time we got you that doctor's appointment, Mom," Derek said. "Today, no more putting it off." They led me back to the house like I was a child or a prisoner. I felt completely helpless. The next day, Courtney drove me to see a doctor, not my regular physician, but a psychiatrist that Courtney had chosen. Dr. Franklin was middle-aged, professional, with a kind but clinical manner. "So, Priscilla," he said, after Courtney left the room, "your daughter-in-law tells me you've been experiencing some difficulties lately." I tried to explain everything rationally, calmly, but even as I talked, I could hear how it sounded. A cashier warning me about my new daughter-in-law based on someone who looked similar 3 years ago. Accusations of threats and schemes. Claims that Courtney was pretending to be someone she wasn't. Dr. Franklin listened patiently, taking notes. When Courtney returned, he asked her to describe what she'd observed. "She's been so confused," Courtney said, her voice filled with loving concern. "She gets lost easily. She forgets conversations we've had. Sometimes she insists things happened that didn't happen. Just yesterday, she became convinced I'd done something to her car tires. And she's been accusing me of terrible things, saying I'm planning to hurt Derek. It's been very frightening, honestly," but I know it's not her fault. She's been under tremendous stress since her husband passed away. Dr. Franklin nodded sympathetically. Grief can manifest in many ways. Combined with age-related changes, it's not uncommon to see some cognitive difficulties. I don't have cognitive difficulties, I protested. But the doctor gave me that same pitying look Helen had. Let's do some evaluation, shall we? Just to establish a baseline. By the time the appointment was over, I'd been given a prescription for anti-anxiety medication and a referral for further neurological testing. The doctor recommended that someone monitor my medication to ensure I took it properly. In the car on the way home, Courtney said nothing. She didn't need to. She'd won, and we both knew it. That evening, I overheard another phone conversation. I'd started being very, very careful about how I moved around the house, trying to catch Courtney off guard. She was in the kitchen, speaking quietly into her phone while Derek worked late in his office. "It's working perfectly," she murmured. "The psychiatric evaluation is in place. The medication starts tonight, which will make her seem even more confused. Once we have her declared incompetent, we get control of her trust fund too. 800,000. Derek's already been primed to believe she needs professional care." There was a pause. "Derek signed papers giving me power of attorney if anything happens to him. He did it last week. Everything's in place. The car accident is scheduled for next Friday during his business trip to Boston. Once he's gone, I'll be the devoted widow. So tragic. So young. And the confused mother-in-law will need to go into a facility for her own safety." My blood turned to ice. Next Friday. That was 8 days away. 8 days until Courtney planned to murder my son. "The brake line will fail on the highway," Courtney continued. "Just like the others. It always works. No one ever suspects. And this time, with his mother's mental state, if anyone does ask questions, we can point to her paranoid delusions about me. Perfect cover." I backed away silently, my heart hammering. I had to do something. But what? No one believed me. I'd been effectively discredited, isolated, and painted as mentally unstable. Derek trusted Courtney completely. The police would think I was crazy if I reported this. Harold. I needed Harold. His vacation had to be over soon. But I had no phone, no way to contact him, no way to contact anyone. I was running out of time, and my son was going to die unless I found a way to stop this nightmare. I spent the next day pretending to be more confused than I was, playing into Courtney's narrative. I hoped that if she thought I was becoming docile and compliant, she might lower her guard. I took the anxiety medication she gave me, but I held it under my tongue and spat it out later when I was alone. I needed my mind clear. While Courtney was out running errands, I used Derek's computer again, this time more carefully. I managed to find Harold's cell phone number in an old email and wrote it down on a scrap of paper that I tucked into my bra. Then I found Courtney's purse in her bedroom and discovered my phone inside, turned off. I powered it on just long enough to see that all my photos had been deleted. Every single image of Derek's documents was gone. Then I turned it off and put it back exactly where I found it. At least I knew where it was now. That afternoon, using Derek's computer while Courtney was at work, I did something risky. I ordered a small recording device online, the kind used for lectures or meetings. I had it shipped to a neighbor's house 4 streets over, paying for overnight delivery with Derek's credit card. The charge would show up as a generic electronics purchase. By the time Derek or Courtney noticed it, if they did, it would hopefully be too late. The next morning at dawn, I snuck out of the house. My joints ached from sleeping poorly, and my injured pride made every step feel heavy. But I made it to that neighbor's house. The package was sitting on their doorstep as promised. I grabbed it quickly and hurried back before anyone woke up. I spent the day figuring out how the device worked, hiding in my room with the door locked. It was small, no bigger than a USB drive, with a clip that could attach to clothing or be hidden in a pocket. The audio quality was surprisingly good when I tested it. That evening, while Courtney was on one of her phone calls, I managed to hide the device behind a decorative vase in the living room where she usually talked. My hands shook the entire time, terrified she'd walk in and catch me. Over the next 2 days, I captured everything. Courtney talking to her accomplice about the planned car accident. Details about how they'd cut Derek's brake line so it would fail on the highway near Hartford. Discussion of the insurance money and inheritance they'd collect. References to other jobs they'd done together in Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Chicago. Names, dates, amounts of money. Everything. I couldn't believe how much she revealed during these calls. But I supposed she felt safe. After all, her crazy mother-in-law was too incompetent to be a threat. On Wednesday, 4 days before Derek's scheduled trip to Boston, I made my move. I retrieved the recording device while Courtney was out shopping. Then I snuck out to that neighbor's house again and asked to use their phone, claiming mine was still missing and I needed to call about a prescription. I dialed Harold's cell number with trembling fingers. "Harold Patterson," he answered. "Harold, it's Priscilla, Thomas's wife, Derek's mother." "Priscilla, I got your email. Is everything all right?" "You said it was an emergency." In a rush, keeping my voice low, I told him everything. The fake daughter-in-law, the psychiatric evaluation, the planned murder, the recordings I'd made. He listened without interrupting. "I'll contact the police immediately," he said when I finished. "Don't do anything else. Don't confront her. Just stay safe until I call you back. Give me a number where I can reach you." I gave him the neighbor's number and hung up, feeling a tiny spark of hope for the first time in days. But when I turned around, Courtney was standing in the neighbor's living room doorway. She must have followed me. "What are you up to, Priscilla?" she asked, her voice like silk-covered steel. "Nothing, just making a call about my medication." "Really? Because you seemed very animated for someone discussing prescriptions." She walked toward me slowly. "You know, I've been very patient with you, very understanding, but I'm starting to think you're not as confused as you've been pretending to be." My heart hammered. "I don't know what you mean." Courtney smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "We'll see about that." That afternoon, I went back to Derek's house feeling watched, hunted. Courtney's demeanor had changed subtly. She was suspicious now, alert. I stayed in my room as much as possible, clutching the recording device in my pocket like a talisman. That evening, I waited for Harold to call back, but the call never came. I grew more and more anxious as the hours passed. Had he really believed me? Had he contacted the police? Or had he dismissed me as troubled, confused, just like everyone else? At 9 that night, I heard Derek and Courtney arguing downstairs. I crept to the top of the stairs to listen. "I don't understand why you won't postpone the Boston trip," Courtney was saying. "I have a bad feeling about it." "I can't postpone it," Derek replied. "This client is too important. I'll be fine. It's just 2 days. Will your mother be all right here alone? Maybe I should stay home with her instead of going to my conference." My blood ran cold. Courtney didn't have any conference. This was new information. She was planning to have an alibi when Derek died. "She'll be fine," Derek said. "And you can't miss your nonprofit conference. You've been planning it for months." They talked a bit more, then I heard footsteps on the stairs. I rushed back to my room and pretended to be asleep, but I wasn't fooling anyone. Courtney knew I was listening. She knew I was up to something. The next day was Thursday. Derek's trip was tomorrow, Friday. I was running out of time, and I still hadn't heard from Harold. That afternoon, disaster struck. I'd hidden the recording device in my room, tucked inside a book. But when I went to check on it, the book was open and the device was gone. I tore my room apart, searching for it, my panic rising. It wasn't there. Courtney must have searched my room and found it. At dinner that night, Courtney casually set the device on the table between us. "Looking for this?" she asked sweetly. Derek looked at it, confused. "What is that?" "It's a recording device," Courtney said. "I found it in your mother's room. She's been secretly recording us, probably for weeks." "Mom, is that true?" Derek asked, hurt and confusion warring on his face. "I had to," I said desperately. "Derek, please listen to me. Courtney is planning to kill you tomorrow. Your brake line has been cut. She's going to make it look like an accident. Please. Please check your car before you leave. Derek stared at me, then at Courtney, then back at me. This is too much. This is beyond too much. Courtney's eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry, Derek. I tried to help her. I really did. But I think she's getting worse. This paranoid behavior is dangerous. What if she tries to hurt herself? Or us? She's lying, I shouted. Everything she's told you is a lie. Her name probably isn't even Courtney. She's done this before. She killed a man in Philadelphia named Richard. She's a con artist, a murderer. Please, Derek, you have to believe me. But I saw it in his face. I'd lost him completely. He looked at me like I was a stranger, someone to be pitied and feared. I think Mom needs to be in a facility, Derek said quietly. Somewhere she can get proper care. This isn't safe anymore. No, I stood up, knocking my chair over. Derek, I'm your mother. I'm trying to save your life. Just check your brake line. That's all I'm asking. Just check it before you leave tomorrow. I'm calling Dr. Franklin, Derek said, pulling out his phone. This is a crisis situation. Courtney stood up and put her arms around him, comforting him while he made the call. Over his shoulder, she looked at me and smiled. A cold, triumphant smile. She'd won. She'd completely won. Derek thought I was insane. My evidence was gone. Harold hadn't called back. And tomorrow, my son was going to drive to Boston with cut brake lines. And he was going to die. I stumbled backwards out of the dining room, my vision blurring with tears. In that moment, I felt more alone and helpless than I ever had in my entire life. My husband was dead. My son didn't believe me. And a murderer had successfully isolated me from any help. The game was over, and I had lost. But then, as I stood there in the hallway, something inside me hardened. I thought of Thomas, of how he'd always taught me to never give up, to fight for what mattered. I thought of Emily's sister, Amanda, and the man in Philadelphia, and who knew how many other victims Courtney had destroyed. I thought of my son, who I'd carried and raised and loved for 32 years. I wasn't done fighting. Not yet. If no one else would save Derek, then I would have to do it myself. I had one night left, one chance to stop this, and I was going to take it. That night, I stayed awake, every nerve in my body alert. Dr. Franklin had come to the house and strongly recommended immediate admission to a psychiatric facility for evaluation. Derek had reluctantly agreed, but said they'd wait until Saturday to make arrangements after his Boston trip. At 1 a.m, when I was certain Courtney was asleep, I crept down the hallway to Derek's bedroom. My joints ached and my heart hammered, but I moved as quietly as I could. I eased open his door. Derek was asleep, curled on his side. I approached his bed and gently shook his shoulder. Derek, I whispered. Derek, wake up. He stirred, then opened his eyes, startled. Mom? What are you doing? I need you to listen to me. Really listen. I'm not crazy and I'm not confused. Courtney is planning to kill you tomorrow. Your brake line has been cut. Please, please, just check your car before you leave. If I'm wrong, I'll go to the facility without argument. But if I'm right, you'll be alive. Derek sat up, running his hand through his hair. In the dim light from the hallway, he looked so much like his father. Mom, this has to stop. I'm begging you. Just check the brake line, that's all, please. Maybe it was something in my voice, or maybe it was the desperation in my eyes, but Derek finally sighed. Fine. If I check the car and prove there's nothing wrong, will you agree to get help? Yes. I promise. All right. Let's go. We both got dressed quietly and went down to the garage. It was 1:30 in the morning. Derek got his flashlight from the tool bench and crouched down to inspect his car, a newer model sedan. I stood nearby, my entire body tense with hope and fear. He examined the undercarriage, focusing on the brake system. At first, he didn't see anything unusual, and my heart sank. But then he moved the flashlight to a different angle, and his entire body went rigid. Oh my God, he whispered. What? What is it? He stood up slowly, his face pale even in the dim garage light. The brake line. It's been cut. Not completely severed, but scored. It would have failed after about an hour of driving. On the highway, probably around Hartford, just like. He stopped, the full implications hitting him. His eyes met mine, filled with shock and horror. How did you know? He asked. I heard her on the phone. I tried to tell you, but you wouldn't listen. Derek, we need to call the police right now. Suddenly, the garage light flipped on, flooding the space with harsh brightness. We both spun around. Courtney stood in the doorway, leading from the house, wearing a long white nightgown. She was holding a gun. I was hoping to do this quietly, she said, her voice eerily calm. The brake line was supposed to handle everything, but you just couldn't leave well enough alone, could you, Priscilla? Derek stepped in front of me. Courtney, what are you doing? What I've done 4 times before, she said simply. You're number 5, Derek. Well, you were supposed to be. Your mother's made things more complicated than they needed to be. 4 times? Derek's voice was barely a whisper. You've killed 4 people? 5, actually. There was a practice run early on that didn't go as smoothly as I'd hoped, but I learned from my mistakes. Richard in Philadelphia was perfect. So was Marcus in Baltimore, and Stephen in Chicago. And there was Jonathan before that. They all loved me. They all trusted me. They all made me the beneficiary of everything. She smiled, and it was the most chilling thing I'd ever seen. You were going to be the best one yet, Derek. 1.2 million in insurance, plus your investments, the house, your practice, and your mother's trust fund. Over 3 million total. The trust fund is mine, I said, my voice shaking. Derek only manages it, but once you were declared incompetent, I'd have control. Derek had already prepared the documents, all very neat and legal. Courtney's eyes were cold, empty of any humanity. Gary is waiting outside. He's been my partner since the beginning. My actual husband, technically. We've built quite a nice nest egg over the years. The police are coming, I said, grasping at hope. I called my lawyer. He contacted them. They know everything. Courtney laughed. You mean Harold? The one whose office I called 3 days ago? He's still in Scotland, Priscilla. I spoke to his secretary. She said he wouldn't be back until Monday. You were talking to someone, but I don't think it was Harold. My heart plummeted. I'd been so desperate to believe Harold had answered that I hadn't verified it was really him. It could have been anyone. The recording device was gone. I had no proof. No help coming. This complicates things, Courtney continued, but we can work with it. A murder-suicide. Unstable elderly woman becomes convinced her son is in danger. In her paranoid delusion, she shoots him, then herself. So tragic. I'll be the devastated widow who tried so hard to get her the help she needed. She raised the gun, pointing it at Derek. No. I lunged forward, but Derek pushed me back. Run, Mom. Everything happened at once. Derek charged at Courtney. She fired. The sound in the enclosed garage was deafening. Derek fell, clutching his shoulder. I screamed. Then, suddenly, the garage was filled with flashing blue and red lights. Car doors slammed. Voices shouted, "Police! Drop the weapon!" Courtney spun toward the open garage door, gun still in hand. 3 police officers stood there, weapons drawn. "Drop it now," one of them commanded. Courtney hesitated for just a moment. I saw her calculating, considering her options. Then she bolted toward the side door of the garage, the one leading to the backyard. She made it 3 steps before an officer tackled her from behind. The gun went flying. Courtney fought viciously, but within seconds she was on the ground, hands being cuffed behind her back. More police poured in. One of them ran toward Derek, calling for an ambulance. Another approached me, asking if I was hurt. I barely heard them. I was rushing to Derek's side, pressing my hands against his bleeding shoulder. "I'm sorry," he gasped. "Mom, I'm so sorry I didn't believe you." "Shh, save your strength." You're going to be fine." An officer crouched beside us. "Ma'am, are you Priscilla?" "Yes. Your lawyer Harold called us from Scotland. He used an international phone service, which is why the call might have seemed odd. He explained everything and sent us audio files. We've been watching the house for the past 2 days, waiting to gather enough evidence. We heard the confrontation through the windows and moved in. Relief flooded through me so intensely I nearly collapsed. The recordings, he got them? He said you'd emailed them before the device was discovered. They were in his automated backup system. The officer looked at Courtney, who was being dragged out of the garage still fighting. We've been investigating her for 3 months, since Baltimore. One of the victim's brothers wouldn't let the case go. When Harold contacted us with your information, everything clicked into place. Outside, I heard more shouting. Through the garage door, I saw another person being arrested. A man in his 40s, gray-haired, with cold eyes. That must be Gary. The ambulance arrived. Paramedics rushed in to treat Derek. The bullet had gone through his shoulder, missing anything vital. He'd be okay. As they loaded him into the ambulance, Derek reached for my hand. "I love you, Mom. Thank you for not giving up." I rode with him to the hospital, my body shaking with delayed shock and overwhelming relief. We'd survived. We'd actually survived. The aftermath was exhausting but necessary. Derek spent 3 days in the hospital recovering from his shoulder wound. I barely left his side. We talked for hours, healing the rifts that Courtney had created between us. He apologized over and over for not believing me, for being so easily manipulated. She knew exactly what buttons to push, he said. She used my grief about Dad, my desire for family, my trust. I feel like such a fool. You're not a fool. She was a professional. This is what she did. The police investigation revealed the full extent of Courtney's crimes. Her real name was Catherine Blackwood, wanted in 3 states under various aliases. Gary Talbot was her actual husband and accomplice. Together, they'd systematically targeted wealthy men, marrying them, isolating them from their families, and then orchestrating their deaths to look like accidents. Richard in Philadelphia, Marcus in Baltimore, Stephen in Chicago, Jonathan in Denver, and others they were still uncovering. Each time, Catherine collected insurance money and inheritances, then disappeared. She'd accumulated over $3 million in the past 7 years. The brake line tampering was her signature method. Clean, reliable, almost impossible to prove as anything but an accident. If I hadn't overheard her phone calls, if I hadn't been suspicious from the start, Derek would have been just another statistic. Emily from the souvenir shop was brought in to testify. When she saw Catherine being led into the courtroom in handcuffs, she broke down sobbing. Her sister Amanda flew in from California to finally get closure about Richard's death. The 3 of us sat together during the trial, a strange family bound by survival. "You saved my conscience," Emily told me during a break. "I've been carrying so much guilt about not doing more when Richard died." "You saved my son's life," I told her. "You're a hero, Emily. You had the courage to speak up when it mattered most." The trial lasted 6 weeks. Catherine showed no remorse, even tried to charm the jury with the same tactics she'd used on her victims. But the evidence was overwhelming. The recordings I'd made were played in court, her voice cold and calculating as she planned Derek's murder. Testimony from the other victims' families painted a picture of a predator who'd refined her methods over years. She was convicted on multiple counts of first-degree murder, attempted murder, fraud, conspiracy, and identity theft. The judge sentenced her to 35 years in prison with no possibility of parole. Gary received 25 years. As the verdict was read, Catherine finally looked at me across the courtroom. Her mask slipped for just a moment, and I saw pure hatred in her eyes. But I didn't look away. I'd won. My son was alive, and she would never hurt anyone again. Derek's recovery was slower and more complicated than just the physical wound. He went to therapy twice a week to process the trauma and betrayal. His practice suffered for a few months while he dealt with everything. but his clients were understanding. Most stayed with him, and new ones came. The hardest part for Derek was learning to trust again. He'd been so completely fooled that he questioned his judgment in everything. But gradually, with professional help and my support, he started to heal. "I valued the wrong things," he told me one afternoon, 6 months after everything happened. "I was so lonely after Dad died that I jumped at the first person who seemed to fill that void. I didn't take the time to really know her, to see the red flags. We all make mistakes, sweetheart. What matters is that you're learning and growing from this." My relationship with Derek became stronger than it had ever been. He valued my input now, truly listened when I spoke. We had dinner together every week, and he called me daily. The forced intimacy of living through that nightmare had stripped away pretenses and left us with something real and solid. Harold became more than just our lawyer. He'd saved our lives by taking my desperate email seriously, even from another continent. He'd paid for international phone service to call the police, had spent hours coordinating with detectives, had sent them the recordings that I'd managed to email to his backup system before Catherine found the device. He refused to take any additional payment for his work, saying that Thomas had been his dear friend and that protecting Thomas's family was a privilege. As for me, I discovered a new purpose. The experience changed me, hardened me in some ways, but also opened my eyes to how many other people were suffering in silence, disbelieved and dismissed. I started volunteering at a domestic abuse center in town. Many of the women there knew what it felt like to be gaslit, to have their reality questioned, to be isolated from people who loved them. I could help them see the patterns, recognize the manipulation tactics. I became an advocate, someone who believed survivors, even when their stories seemed impossible. I also began giving talks about elder abuse awareness. So many older people are taken advantage of by caregivers, relatives, or romantic partners. The warning signs are often dismissed as confusion or paranoia, just as mine had been. I taught families to take concerns seriously, to investigate thoroughly, to trust but verify. 1 year after that terrible night in the garage, Derek and I returned to the shore town where it had all started. We found Emily working at the souvenir shop during her summer break from college. She was studying criminal justice now, inspired by her role in bringing Catherine to justice. We took her to lunch at a small restaurant overlooking the ocean. The late September day was beautiful, warm and bright, with seagulls calling overhead. "I think about that day all the time," Emily said. "What if I hadn't warned you? What if I'd just stayed quiet?" "But you didn't stay quiet," I told her. "You were brave. You trusted your instincts even though it was scary." My sister says the same thing. She's doing so much better now. Finally getting therapy for everything that happened with Richard. Having closure has helped her start to heal. We talked for over 2 hours. 3 people who'd been thrown together by tragedy but had come out the other side stronger. When we finally left the restaurant, Derek hugged Emily tight. "Thank you," he said simply. "Thank you for caring enough about a stranger to take a risk." Emily hugged him back, tears in her eyes. "I'm just glad I could help." As Derek and I walked to the car, he put his arm around my shoulders. "I'll always believe you from now on, Mom. Always." I learned that lesson the hard way. I leaned into him, feeling the warmth of the afternoon sun on my face, the salt breeze from the ocean, the solid presence of my son beside me. We'd survived something that should have destroyed us. We'd fought back against calculated evil and won. "I love you, Derek. I love you too, Mom." We drove home in comfortable silence, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not the kind that comes from an absence of challenges, but the deeper peace that comes from knowing you fought for what mattered and won. I thought about all the victims who'd come before us, who hadn't had someone to believe the warnings, who hadn't survived. I carried their memory with me, a reminder of why my work mattered now. Catherine Blackwood would spend decades behind bars, unable to hurt anyone else. The families she'd destroyed finally had justice. And Emily, Derek, and I had forged a bond that would last the rest of our lives. The experience taught me lessons I'll carry forever. Trust your instincts, even when everyone doubts you. A mother's intuition is a powerful thing, honed by years of protecting your child. Evil often wears the most charming face, presenting itself wrapped in smiles and sweetness, but truth has a way of surfacing if you're persistent enough to dig for it. Never underestimate the strength of a woman fighting to protect her child. It doesn't matter if that child is 2 years old or 32, the fierce love remains the same. And when everything else is stripped away, when you're isolated and disbelieved and pushed to your absolute limit, that love will give you the strength to keep fighting. Justice may take time. The road to it may be painful and exhausting, but it's always worth fighting for. I'm not just a survivor of Catherine Blackwood's schemes. I'm a warrior who protected my family, and I'll never stop fighting for the people I love or helping others find the courage to do the same. Have you ever had to fight for the truth when no one believed you? What would you do if someone you loved was in danger but everyone thought you were wrong? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who's going through something similar. If this story moved you or made you think, please consider giving it a like. Subscribe to hear more stories about resilience, survival, and the strength we all carry within us. And please share this with anyone who might need to hear it. Anyone who's ever felt dismissed or disbelieved. Sometimes just knowing we're not alone makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you to trust yourself, to listen when something feels wrong, and to never give up on the people you love. Stay safe out there, and remember that your voice matters. Always.